character and common sense. We sure lacking common sense in our politics right now. So let's kick it off.
All right, so before we begin with all the normal political crap, just want to share a quick story. We take care of my mom. She's 88. She has a hard time walking. Excuse me. And we had decided we would try it without the wheelchair ramp to go down the stairs. And on the way back in, she kind of slipped a little on the threshold, kind of banged up her shin a little bit. Nothing major. But my wife spent the rest of the day just obsessed with it, about how she shouldn't have done this, she shouldn't have done that. And I told her, I said, hey, the way I see it is we learned our lesson. We need the ramp there because the threshold is kind of slippery. It's a little bit rounded and sloped and painted, slippery. So we should be using the ramp, even though it's kind of difficult to get up the ramp. For my mom, steps are steps. They're hard for her. But take the negative and file it in your brain under lessons learned. And remember the positives, because for the last nearly 3 years, my wife has taken care of my mom. And my mom's gotten better. Her numbers, her blood pressure numbers, her diabetes numbers, everything's better. Her mental state of mind is better. But she focused on the negative. And that's one of the things that I've learned from my job as a fire alarm tech. If we make a mistake, we could really F things up pretty badly. But you learn from those mistakes. You don't dwell on them. You learn from them and embrace the positivity. Embrace the things that you do well. The little victories that you have. That's what you should be looking at. Not the failings, not where you lost. Learn from it. Anyhow, one of the things that I rail against seemingly is Democrats, especially the farther left you go, the more I'm going to rail against you. And that's because I live here in California, and I just see that our taxes are it's a complete waste of money. They're constantly looking for new ways to tax us and to fine us and to add levies and surcharges and whatever they can. And then they waste the money, and that's the issue. We could do more. We could build a homeless settlement, or, we could make some white bitch NGO rich. And we choose to make these NGOs rich. We choose to give these so-called charities and nonprofits gobs and gobs of money. And a lot of people get rich off of it. Sure, it provides some jobs at the lower levels. Great. But we don't need to be paying some of these CEOs of these nonprofits, $500,000 to $1 million a year. They just, all I see, especially in LA, is they can't manage money. And then they want more and more and more. First they demand it, then they tax it. Then it's just out of control. And they have to tell lies to get these things across. We're going to see a great example of that later on, where they just lie about their intentions, and then we give them money, and we've been doing this now for at least a couple decades. It's ridiculous. The other day, one of the buildings that I handle is an ICE facility, Immigration Customs Enforcement building. And for the last year and a half, every time I go out to this one, there's this dude across the street. It's an older gentleman, and he's hanging out with some ladies. Sometimes younger people come by, and they just stand there. And he has a sign, and it says, "Who WD Jesus deport?" Well, first of all, you couldn't even get a big enough sign to put the word "would." Who would Jesus deport? I don't know. The money changers? The lazy sloths? The Bible's full of evictions. Come on. And deportations. But I just thought, I understand this has become your social group, but what are you doing? What are you doing? You're standing across from a facility. You're not even doing anything. Half the time, you're not even holding your sign up. It's just propped up against the curb. If you have enough time to stand in front of a frickin' building with a dumbass sign, why don't you go out and clean up the beaches? Why don't you go out and clean up the sidewalks, the gutters? Why don't you go make something out of your time? Go help the homeless people. Go feed the homeless people or something. No, but you're just standing there, and you're only standing there because Trump's in office. I'm willing to bet you weren't there when Obama was deporting people. No, I get it. We can make the argument, oh, well, the way Trump's, you know what? The means is not really the issue. This is what needs to be done. I mean, ICE Boston just arrested a foreign fugitive who is wanted in Brazil for aggravated murder. He was sentenced to 14 years and 3 months in prison there. So he fled to America, of all places. You know, and one of the field office guys, this David Wessling, said this is yet another example of what the media often characterizes as a non-criminal, when in reality, many of these individuals are murderers, sexual predators, gang members, and more. They simply don't have a criminal record in the United States. This guy came here 2 years ago and was released by the Biden administration. What are we supposed to do? We're not supposed to deport this person. We're supposed to allow people to flee a murder conviction in Brazil and come to the United States, and what? We should give them a cell phone and some money and a place to stay? Is that what we really want to be? I understand that we're trying to be a kindler, gentler nation. But if we're being taken advantage of, we're being taken advantage of. It's like I was saying at the beginning. You take the negative outcomes and you learn from them. I mean, you file them away as things we've learned. I found this one interesting. By 2050, Texas is going to pass California in population, driven by immigration and domestic migration. Its economy is growing far faster and is now the headquarters of many California companies. This year, for the first time, Texas passed California and New York as a headquarters for the nation's largest companies. Even the establishmentarian economics recently proclaimed the Lone Star State as America Inc.'s new center of gravity. And like they're saying, this article says, they don't move to Texas for better weather or scenery or for reasonable policies or issues like abortion. And it's not that Texas has smarter people. 4 of the largest engineering schools are in California, compared to only 1 in Texas. And Texas didn't manufacture California's demise. To paraphrase Shakespeare, the blame is not in the stars, but in ourselves. Through their policies, through their greed, through their wasting money, they've had to raise more money every year. And one of the ways they did it was through the entertainment industry, and the entertainment industry is leaving. Yes, there are a lot of well-paid stars who live in California, but nearly 42,000 entertainment jobs left town in 2024 and 2025. Meanwhile, places like Atlanta, Nashville, even New Jersey have been expanding their entertainment sectors and building new studios. Paramount is thinking of moving out of California. Tyler Sheridan, who did Yellowstone, Landman, Lioness, all the other spin-offs of Yellowstone, he's widely ignored by the Hollywood elite. His studio is in Fort Worth, Texas. But the biggest issue is that we're even losing the space industry. They chased out Elon Musk and SpaceX that started here and relies on the kind of talent that California produces. We're becoming the farm club for the rest of the country now. We produce these people, experts in their fields, and then they move elsewhere. And one of the reasons is because of this waste of money. The more money you waste, the more money you have to raise. It's kind of simple. But you know, when Musk left, that meant that rocket production isn't going to be where it could be. San Pedro, the Inland Empire, Sacramento. But it's in Texas now because of California politicians. Nobody left California for any other reason other than the fact that California has become, oh, wait, I hear you out there. Oh, we're the 4th largest economy. Great. Let's see how long that remains. Because that is all slowly drowning right now. We have lost in tech sector. We used to have 19% of tech sector of high tech jobs in 2019. That's now down to 16%. And like this article says, California still remains unmatched, still retains unmatched expertise in high-tech industries. But current preeminence is not permanent. New York and Massachusetts used to be big players too. Lots of people move from, just to make you happy out there. Lots of people move from red states to California because there's better weather, it's better policies, right? Socially, we're a little bit more progressive. That's really helpful for certain people. And welcome to the state. I don't want you living in a red state where people are persecuting you because of who you are. But at the same time, they then have to leave California because you can't afford it. And you're paying all of this money in rent or mortgages. You're paying all this money for energy and gasoline for your car. And then you're surrounded by crazy people. You're watching infrastructure crumble. You're watching every single day that goes by the politicians doing something stupid that affects your pocketbook and then tells you that you should be thankful for it. California has done that. They've driven out the middle and working class Californians. There's places, San Bernardino, Oakland, South Los Angeles. It's not working. Yes, we're the fourth largest economy, which really helps billionaires, but it doesn't help the people on the lower rungs of the ladder. It's ridiculous. And when we look at some of their policies that are leading us down this rabbit hole of death, look no further than what we did in our schools. Berkeley math professor sounds alarm on liberal test-blind policies, warns many students badly behind. This is a Berkeley professor, Stanikova. I'm not even going to try to pronounce that first name. We watched students struggle through material they were expected to master years earlier. Yeah. They're coming in unprepared. 3 days a week, I stand in front of lecture halls with 500 to 1,400 students. By the second week of the semester, I already know who's in trouble. Some students are 5 to 8 years behind on mathematics. Office hours that should be spent discussing integrals instead becomes lessons on fractions and basic algebra you would expect students to learn in middle schools. They phased out standardized testing. They said it was unfair to certain racial groups. Since then, admission officers have been forbidden from considering the one standardized measure that provided a common academic benchmark across California's thousands of schools. He laid out Stankova. Man, I'm not doing well this morning. Stankova laid out brutal data in the sharp decline in student math readiness after they stopped considering standardized testing. From 2018 to 2020, 71% of roughly 2,200 tested Calculus 1 students were deemed ready or nearly ready, with just 0.14%, so less than 1%, tested below basic algebra. Among roughly 2,800 students tested from 2021 to 2023, only 51% were ready or nearly ready. That fell to 44% in 2013, and a whopping 17% answered none of the 8 tested topics correctly. So this group of professors is saying we need to return to standardized testing. And this is what they wrote. The SAT Act mathematic requirement is not an obstacle to equity. Rather, it is a prerequisite for it. See, what I fear has happened is that California politicians are in bed with the lenders. The more people who go to college, the more people need college loans. So pass them through junior high and high school. Don't worry about whether they're ready or not for college. Remember a while back we talked about how California celebrated their seniors getting their college financial acceptance letters, or it's warm out here, my brain ain't working. Essentially, they celebrated that high school seniors were ready to take on these loans, but they're not ready to take on college. And that's so the answer is we're then going to forgive the student loans because these people will never make enough to pay it back. So now that we've spent the money on that, we need to raise your taxes. See, we could do more if we just kept our money. I mean, you know how many people are rich right now in California without actually doing their job? Dozens, hundreds? We don't know because this information is purposely kind of like murkied up by the government. Here's another one they're murkying up. So Gavin Newsom has a thing called Wildlife Survivors First. Sounds good, right? Sounds like the state is going to take care of the people whose lives were upended by wildfires. But no. This is a way to limit the ability of wildfire victims and their insurance companies to recover damages. And why do we need to have this wildlife victims first? Well, according to them, it's because it's not the utilities, it's the lawyers. The lawyers are just profiting too much off of this. Really? Hedge fund managers and attorneys and insurance companies are taking wildfire survivors' money. So they're going to limit the amount that people can get back. That way, the greedy companies. Look, I'm going to make it really clear if you haven't figured this one out. I'd rather have greedy companies. I'd rather have super rich CEOs than rich government employees or NGO employees because they ain't doing shit. All right? But there is some onus on these companies. But we're not going to discuss that. We're going to bail them out. Newsom signed a law in 2019 to create a $21 billion wildlife fund to protect utilities. PG&E was bankrupt. Well, they got the money to keep going. Edison, who directly started one of the fires, reaped $4.5 billion in profits, triple the year before. They paid out $1.4 billion in shareholder dividends, and they paid their CEO something like $16 million. After Newsom's 2019 bailout, Edison didn't have to worry about paying for fires its equipment started. A new government report just found that the Eaton fire was sparked by an abandoned transmission line that Edison didn't remove. We're not going to hold you responsible. Okay, so then we're not going to go and clean up our old lines? Why? What's their motivation? I don't want to bankrupt these companies. I certainly don't want to make these companies run under the government. But fair's fair. Where are the standards? And now you're going to say wildlife victims first, but you're going to limit the amount of money that they can get back because the state's going to ultimately have to pay that money. And you rather what? Keep the money for reparations? Because that's the kind of stuff that California does. California wants to give out free crack pipes. That's the entire issue that we have here. Their priorities are so upside down. I don't even know if it's salvageable. That's why people are leaving California, because they don't have a choice. You can't live in this cuckoo world where they're going to give free crack pipes and let people camp out in front of parks and libraries and schools and apartments that cost $4,000 a month. The parks are overrun with these people. Well, the people who contribute to society are being punished the most in California. California doesn't like to punish criminals. California doesn't like to punish illegal immigrants. They just let them do what they want to do. And the rest of us have to just live with it. Does that really sound fair? We talked about this. The Democrats, the left, love to run around and talk about no kings, but what are we living in here in California? Other than somebody's kingdom. They pass stupid laws that we don't like, but too bad. We're going to pass another dumb one. And some of the people behind it are some of the biggest hypocrites in the world. The co-chairman of New York City's Democratic Socialists of America comes from a very rich family who bought a 2-family unit in Brooklyn and turned it into basically 1-family townhouse. I believe, reading in between the lines, they just sort of took two buildings and combined them, or two units and combined them into one, where this dickhead and his brother live, and his own father made money in business. Okay? Made a lot of money. Now, this clown comes out and says, he told this to Fox News, he doesn't think anyone should have a constitutional right to double-digit returns on their investment. You see what it is? It's spoiled children who at some point start feeling bad about how spoiled they are, and then they want to destroy the very thing that made their family money. It's ridiculous. I get it. You know, I understand that. I see where they're coming from, but the way they go about it is not right. Dostoevsky had a book called The Possessed, a novel, The Possessed. And it was the sons of rich boomers who were the most in love with socialism, not the poor. That's the truth. That most of these harebrained left-wing ideas are coming from rich people, and they see the lower people as the sheep. I was reading this article about this kid who lives in this $1 million house, and a lot of the defenders said, well, 1.4 million isn't rich. Okay, it was handed to him by his dad. He didn't have to work for it. And that doesn't mean that his family isn't rich just because they only bought a $1.4 million brownstone. Of course, the defenders also say socialists aren't really against the rich, just too rich. I'd like to ask them, how does that work? Too rich for one person? Like, should we strip Elon of a couple $100 billion, then what? Waste it? Give it to people who didn't earn it? It's insane. And then they go and they try to quote or try to bring up the fact that there's European countries over there that are socialist. They're not. They have socialist members of government, but they are capitalistic societies. See, what it is social democrats are just the new goth. As so many people went through the goth phase. I was listening to an old Kevin and Bean from K-Rock, old, probably 10 years ago. They were asking people how goth they were. And the story, one of the ladies told a story. She had a backpack that said, life is a prison, death is parole. And, the other ones were calling in about the black eyeliner, cutting themselves with glass, laying at cemeteries, taking black and white photographs. And I started thinking, maybe just every generation goes through that goth period where a lot of kids are depressed and worried about their future. They don't see that they have a future. They're confused, whatever the issue might be. And that's what these Democrat socialists are tapping into. Yes, lots of young people look at our government and have some fear and trepidation about the future, whether it's Republicans or Democrats. Neither side seems to fully be there for anybody. So these guys rush in and they go, you know what we're going to do? We're going to redistribute wealth. And then all the kids who just want to sit around and play Xbox all day long, they go, oh, cool, I could play Xbox and get a check from the government. That's the prison, by the way. Work is the parole. But that's what they're doing. And then these people get into power, like AOC, who was just a bartender. She makes a whole lot of money, makes some book deals, some speaking engagements. She gets really rich and then fades away into early retirement with a really healthy pension, all paid for by people who actually work. That's the problem I have with DSA. They want to take from the people who work and give to the people who don't want to work. They don't want to enforce laws. They don't want to enforce immigration laws. They don't really want to do anything. They just want to tax the shit out of us, take all that money, give it away for free, and then hope that all the people who got a check are going to vote for them so they could stay in power long enough to become rich fat cats themselves. They used to rail against millionaires. Now it's billionaires. Think about it for a second. They do not like the fact that wealth is being accumulated by singular people or families. That's capitalism, folks. That's the way it works, and we should all aspire to be that. I mean, you could rail about how bad the Kardashians are, but don't you want their money? Don't you want their lifestyle? See? So what? The DSA is going to give it to you? No. Because the truth of the matter is when the government hands out free money, it's just enough money to get by. When they refuse to enforce homeless encampment laws, it's us who suffers. When they let criminals out of jail early, it's us that suffer. They're sitting in gated communities, living in mansions with armed guards. We know this. And as if all of that taxing and all of that isn't bad enough, we find out that here in Los Angeles, if you donate to Karen Bass, thanks to LA's Supermatch program, if you put in $5, they'll match it 6-1. Who's they? Oh, the city. They have put this in place since 1990. They will match donations 6-1 by the city. You put in $25, it's $175. They've created a system where they could take tax money to get reelected, and then they lie to get reelected. The Republican Party of the Los Angeles County spokesperson, Roxanne Hogue, said, "It's like when you're a kid and the kid with the fancy ball gets to make all of the rules of the game you're about to play. It's legal." She went on to say, it's much like when people complain about election fraud in California. It's not fraud. Everything is just codified the way they like it. Almost none of the money that Los Angeles takes in is used for things that make sense. Money goes to homelessness and it increases homelessness. Basically, nothing makes sense here. And this is just another thing that doesn't make sense. The taxpayers are donating. Whether you like it or not, you're donating to Karen Bass's campaign. And then Tuesday, just a few days ago, LA City Council voted 10-3 to strip anti-camping protections from areas around Hollywood, Silver Lake, and Echo Park at the urging of Socialist Councilman Hugo Soto Martinez. Yeah. They spent all that money cleaning up Echo Park. Then they passed Section 41.18 to ban people from basically camping at these locations. But Soto Martinez, who has long opposed the law, successfully pushed the council to remove the restrictions in his District 13, arguing they merely shuffle homeless people from block to block. This is what this clown says. In most cases, it makes it much harder for us to help them because they lose their belongings. They get fined, and many times they get arrested. Okay, stop being a drunk on the streets. I start doing something about this. When are we going to start doing something? Because what's at jeopardy, for example, is the Barnsdale Art Park. It's home to Frank Lloyd Wright's Hollyhock House. It is LA's only UNESCO World Heritage Site. And they used to have to battle small fires, clean up human poop. Remember when we were talking about MacArthur Park and we were talking about tons of needles and tons of human fecal matter? That's what's going to return to these parks. These are the people that you elected in LA. You pay these people, and on a vote of 10-3, they're like, just let them have the parks again. Because we can't find them? What? This is madness. This is madness on an epic scale. The compassionate thing to do is arrest these people and try to get them help. Not sit here and talk about their belongings. Their belongings, what, a bent bicycle rim? Pack it up. Figure it out. You need to have the police drive around with a U-Haul trailer so you can pack stuff up and put it in a little box for the dude? Fine. Do that, but get them off our streets. This is getting ridiculous. The amount of infrastructure that is being stolen. It used to be copper wire. Now it's copper tubing from AC units. There's a restaurant that got hit and they ripped apart the AC unit. Their bill was $130,000. If that place shuts down, people lose their jobs. People don't have a place to eat. It's no different than the so-called food deserts that they like to talk about. The food deserts are usually grocery stores in lower income areas that have been shoplifted or employee theft right out of business. I've told the story before, but I know of a Walmart that's in a nice area, but that nice area is bordered by less desirable area. And they closed almost solely based on employee theft. Because if you are not enforcing laws, people will continue to commit crimes. We have an epidemic with the homeless stealing vital parts of infrastructure, fire alarms, lighting, air conditioning units. And we treat it like petty crime because we don't have the resources. An intelligently run city would be cracking down on this, would be forming task force. And if that task force wasn't enough, form another one. And pass laws, enhancements that make these crimes more punishable than petty theft. There's a big difference between you stealing a candy bar from a store or a copper pipe from an AC unit. The candy bar is a like-for-like replacement. The AC unit is not like-for-like. You may only get away with $10 worth of copper, but that owner or tenant or whoever it is that's paying for the AC unit, homeowner for God's sakes, is on the bill for tens of thousands, if not 100,000 plus. That's where we should be setting the benchmark. It's not about just, for me, it is truly not about being on one side and disliking the other side. It is about being in the middle and seeing one side just going cuckoo. I could talk about Republican cuckoo-ness. I don't understand why weed's illegal in Texas. I don't understand why abortion is illegal in Texas. I don't understand why other states still have problems with racism and homophobia and all that. But that's human nature, I think, really. I mean, if we're going to be honest about it, that's just human nature. I don't understand a lot of what the Republicans believe, and I disagree with them on a lot of things. But every day I look around LA and I just see the results of cuckoo policies, just these negative outcomes. And nobody learns from those negative outcomes. They just turn around, collect taxpayer money for their salary, and keep promising us bigger, brighter, better right down the road. It's bullshit. When is it going to stop? It's very frustrating because all the evidence is laid out in front of people, and yet people still voted for Bass and they still voted for Rahman. Spencer Pratt wasn't a great choice, but man, at least it wasn't Bass or Rahman, but that's who they're going to vote for again because they've convinced all these young people that the problem with California is rich people. Fucking stupid. I'm Kid Copious on Purple State Party. So are you. Love one another. Keep on grinding. And when it gets too much, let the beat drop and dance it out.